The NDC administration failed in the first term, and they're begging for another one. Sing for them, sing for them.
Check, check, check. You know it's a beat to the big representative for DJ Soulkaholic. You run the place, you lock the place, keeping it real all the time. Boogie and dance it straight.
The leader don't listen, so they divide it. They lie for the people. So many things they promise they go do. They say $700 not enough money. They go give 1,000 to them money. Soon as they get in power, the money program over. They go in the wrong way. Want some NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run this country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader don't listen. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it in two. I hear they say that they love the culture. The worst carnival we had in Grenada. 4 years now and things ain't getting better. And they keep pointing finger at one another. Carnival come and carnival go. Problems to pay price money, you know. They go in the wrong way. Mash up NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run the country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader don't listen. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it in two. They go in the wrong way. In fighting for so. They go in the wrong way. Remind us of the rebel. They go in the wrong way. Behaving too ignorant. They go in the wrong way. And they suspend parliament. Unemployment very high in this country. NDC send back the CCC. Teachers and nurses ain't getting salary. No proper medical facilities. Crime is on the rise, you know. Young people killing more than before. Yellow. They go in the wrong way. Want some NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run this country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader don't listen. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it in two.
I want to take this time off to say a pleasant good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
That was only an illusion.
Hope that we're having ourselves a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Monday bank account. Explain it to us, the shop.
It is another wonderful, wonderful day in the Spice Island of Grenada, Carriacou, Petite Martinique.
Give it down.
Today being Wednesday the 22nd today of October 2025. Yeah, I know.
Run this one.
That face
They say the leader
has been missing in action for the past few days, right? But however, we're back here again.
and do nothing for St. Patrick's yet.
If I may, let me just take the music down right now. Again, I want to say a pleasant good evening to each and every one of you guys. First and foremost, let me see how sincere I am in making the apology that we haven't had the program for the past few days. I did explain to many persons that we would have had a systematic problem, and so that problem would have caused when I do recordings, you would not be able to store it. So even to upload the videos or whatever it is, it was giving me mayhem. And so we did have to retract the way in which we were doing stuff. And at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that we are on the go. We're having everything green light and we're ready to go. Yes. What I can say, however, is that we just basically made a shift system in terms of causing this to happen, but it is not yet up and running. The device that I am supposed to be in possession of, I don't have it as yet, and so we had to, so at this stage I'm just making things happen. You know what I mean? I'm just making things happen. But however, we want to say that this at this stage, those programs are of paramount importance, and we ought to be able to, broadcast things that are of importance. And I maybe was going to wait a few days for the program to come about, but I saw some things in the recent days that I had to address. I really have to address, right? So I just want to let you guys know this is one of my main reasons for being here. On October 31st, the After Work Lime, we're going to be having it right at the headquarters of the New National Party. It starts at 4. It's a lot of fun, laughter, meeting persons that it may be just your social media friends, and you're meeting them in actual person. We do have this afternoon at the St. George's Methodist School, the public meeting that will be held. And so we want to invite each and every one of you guys to listen this. This program is being aired at 5. Yeah, it takes you up just about 6 o'clock, so you have enough time to view the meeting this afternoon. So broadcasting is actually be happening at 5 today, and then it would be viewed later on in the afternoon. The meeting that is on the very same class in session page. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying I know many things have been happening in recent days, and it leaves you in amazement. And I am fascinated. And I'm fascinated first and foremost as it relates to persons sharing their support to some of the things that we know that are negative to the development of our country. We know that it is wrong, and yet still we remain silent. Now, we have some brewing issues, and those issues are of national importance. And again, the Prime Minister selects to speak in his own time on the issue. In a most recent interview, he disclosed that at the end of the week, we are going to hear about it, and he's going to address it. And that is him speaking to somebody after the Heroes event that he had recently. But ladies and gentlemen, just to dive briefly into this conversation, I'm taking this one here from our dear sister Linda Straker. And as somebody would have said to me, this Prime Minister continues to put his foot in his mouth. Yeah? A press release from the Government Information Service dated on the 17th of September said, in this spirit of Caribbean unity and given the current heightened tension, Grenada offers itself a willing interlocutor and facilitator to peaceful dialogue. You all will remember that one, eh? So, while Grenada was offering to be an interlocutor and facilitator for peaceful dialogue, there was a request from the same U.S., which is surrounding Venezuela with warships, requesting that Grenada grant permission to install a radar, MBIA, and the military assets on our near the island. So Grenada wants to be an interlocutor between Venezuela and the U.S., but we cannot even respond to the U.S. request to us almost 3 months later. You may not know, but I did obtain a certificate of international relations, and this lack of response 3 months after is not a positive display of strengthening diplomacy. So, to our decision and the policymakers, is Grenada's leadership planning to adopt the Pontus Pilate strategy or approach? Now, it was brought to our attention last evening, ladies and gentlemen, by the Prime Minister himself, that the request made by the United States was made since in August of this year. Yeah, you heard me right. The Prime Minister stated that in August of this year was when the request made. Now, due to a media source, the Grenadian people was informed of the request that was made by the United States. With that being said, and then made public, the Grenadian people then started moving aggressive to the request, like, what is going on? And while we were thinking that the Prime Minister's response was a couple days of the request made, we are now realizing that the Prime Minister had that information. The government had that information. The cabinet had that information. In excess of when we got to know about a month or so thereafter. Now I saw a recent list, and we're going to get to that one, that speaks to transparency, that the Prime Minister or the government of today would have basically reinstated transparency. Now, if a serious matter of that nature, and now that it has been made public, there is protest actions. The churches, and a particular reverend is basically stating that openly that he did support the Prime Minister, or his support towards the Prime Minister. If he makes a particular decision, he's going to take away his support and others. See how bold the churches get? So, now that we have the public knowledge, there is a social media buzz. Entities are basically protesting. When we thought it was just a request made weeks ago, when we thought that our dear Prime Minister was not responding just a few days after the request, we are now understanding that it is months. And now that there is a public cry and the public has knowledge thereof, there is now a release that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is going to deal with it, and the Prime Minister is going to meet with CARICOM. Ladies and gentlemen, that is misleading, if you ask me. Because all these actions are now taking place because the public is aware and the public is now speaking. But the government kept that information from its people. So we would have just known that, hey, he would have said yes, and we'd have just seen the radar and other things placed on the airport. But even during such time, with the request that was made by the United States, here comes the government on the 17th of September pretending, and I call it pretense because at the end of the day, how can the enemy send for my assistance or request my assistance? Yeah? And then I go and shake hands with other persons after knowing the request made by the enemy? So when the government stated that they were wanting to be a peacemaker or interlocutor, they well knew that the request which was made by the US was one that was pending. And so if you are wanting to be somebody that is going to be peaceful in all this, and the enemy is asking you, or the persons are asking you, can you please rest this day on your island for me? I think the answer should be a resounding no, because you want to put peace. So if you're wanting to put peace, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wanting to put peace, and the enemy come to you, or part of the persons that are in conflict come to you and say, this is my request to you, I think the easiest answer, therefore, is to say no. But here we are learning this information months thereafter. Months thereafter, ladies and gentlemen, we are learning about this. What does this say about our Prime Minister and our government of the day? Somebody said to me, somebody just messaged me, and they would have asked, what is the last piece I read as it relates to the Pontius Pilate primary strategy. Let me explain to you that the strategy was maintained in Rome, and it was to control or violate provinces through a mix of forces and political maneuvering, which was a difficult balance and ultimately lead to a downfall. His action demonstrates a pattern of culture insensitivity, a readiness to use military forces, and a political primaries, that sometimes allow public pressure to stray his decision, most famous in trial of Jesus. So for those of us who remember, it's like, okay, you're swinging it here, you're swinging it there, you want to make people believe as if you in the process of thinking when you already know you had an idea or you have an idea as to what is happening. This basically that what the strategy speaks about, right? But ladies and gentlemen, it surprises me. It surprises me when I heard last evening that the Prime Minister said what he said. But I want to read something very briefly to you guys. And again, it's coming from Javani Campbell's Facebook page. Our lives begin to end the day we became silent about things that matter. That was a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. He says, our lives began to end the day we became silent about things that matter. Silence is a form of surrendering. Injustice thrives when voices fall quiet. Moral courage means speaking up. And that life losses, meaning when you abandon the responsibility to defend what is right. And I'm happy that the dear brother did bring that up, because it basically concludes what I'm saying. I am not of the opinion that the government or the Prime Minister must come and start to rah-rah and re-re. But he needs to understand what and whom he is serving. And if you are of a leadership where you have a little salty shop, or you have a little business on the side, or you're thriving in your business, which is a very small percentage of representation, then if you choose to speak when you want to speak, you speak. But when you have the people's business in which they elect you to perform, you are entitled to give them answers on their request. And you are not to determine in your own way and fashion and form when you should answer, if you should answer, and all these things. And then you are acting on the state's expense, and it is the people's money that is causing you to sit in the position that you are in. And if you believe that I am paying you to answer me when you want, then you have another thing coming. Ladies and gentlemen, it was publicized the last evening. Some 25 termed major project done by the Honorable Deacon and the NDC administration since they took office in June of 2022. And I know it is not a public statement made by the National Democratic Congress, but I am certain it is a supporter of the party that has since labeled those things as major projects. Now, the terminology in itself, major projects, and I had the definition at hand, but somehow, I don't know. All right, major projects. Let me just give you the meaning of the terminology. Let me give you what is meant by a major project. A major project is a complex high value. Hear me? A complex high value endeavor that is often categorized by specific monetary costs, a long duration, high risk, and involving of many stakeholders. Example, range from scale infrastructure development like new transportation network to complex technology to research initiatives are considered to be major projects. Complexity, these projects are multifaceted and require a high degree of management and coordination. High money value. They often value a substantial budget, sometimes exceeding millions or even billions of dollars. Organization complexity. It involves numerous stakeholders with diverse interests, making coordinators and communication challenging. Long duration. Major projects can take years or even decades from conception to completion. High risk. Due to the scale and complexity, they carry significant and risk that requires detailed planning and control. Dedication resources. The typical requirement dedication project team and full-time project manager that may necessity and creation of project control office. Example, construction, building a new airport, a large bridge, a significant public work project. Technology, developing a custom software, application or upgrading national network. Research, conducting high-level, long-term research projects such as those required for PhD pathway. Infrastructure, large-scale project like upgrading national infrastructures and mentioned in this list. So I just gave you, ladies and gentlemen, a brief meaning as it relates to the terminology major project. And why I'm zeroing into this. Now, this is supporters posting. This is supporters posting. At the end of the day, government's performances are being reflected by who's looking on. And persons are now of the belief that this is who does it. And I want us to understand where I'm coming from. Understand this is a supporter that is seeing those things as an accomplishment by this administration. And so, if you listen to the things that are mentioned in the definition as it relates to long-term and spending and all these things that were mentioned, now, this is me going in depth with the research. Now, there are persons who won't be able to do what I just did, and they are going to see those listings being made public. And they would be by what? The government did all this. Not understanding some of the things that are listed and its origin and its negotiations, and as mentioned in the part as major project that says to conducting a high-level, long-term research, such that requires a form of PhD. Yeah? And so, we have in recent days realized that there is a lot of things that this administration has taken praise for. Yeah? The praise that has been given to them. Understand, folks, I'm using one computer, unlike when I had two computers. Yeah? I am usually using one, so some of the things whereby I could have just gotten on the other side, I now have to use that one computer. Right? Right. I want to get through what I want to get to. Right. Thank you very much for waiting. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, as I said, it goes on to just people believing, oh, it's major project, and they just list it, and, persons are not looking on. No, if we don't debunk those things, persons are going to believe it. Hence the reason why I'm taking the opportunity to debunk them. Because when persons are out there, and they might be scrolling through social media and they see those things and they read it, they might believe, yeah, by what? That's very good. But ladies and gentlemen, the first thing listed here, and we're talking since June 2022, since they took office, over 100 new officers trained and deployed. It's a major project seen by a supporter of the National Democratic Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, I was listed within the organ of the police force in May 26, May 26, 2006. Yeah? May 26, 2006. I was listed within the Royal Grenada Police Force here in Grenada. Prior to my course being recruited, I had a cousin, first cousin, and a friend, close friend, who passed out in the course before me, and their course ended in, I think it was October, November of 2005. Now, their course had at least 30 to 40 persons, because on average, when recruitment is taking place, it's about 40 persons. And my course joined in May of that next year. So imagine October, November of the year before, 2005, and then 2006 I joined. So when we think of just a year period, right? When I was listed into the organization, in 1 year, mere year period, under the NNP administration, at least 80, I'm talking my course 35 and 36, had at least 40 persons per course. So we're talking about just 1 year, a mere 80 officers were trained and deployed. I've never seen or heard the NNP boasted as it relates to officers' recruitment and deployment and training as an accomplishment. Because if we're going to go there, the comparison that I just gave you alone should let you know that the NNP, maybe within a 1 year period, or in that 1 year period that I just mentioned, might have recruited more than one course in just about a year and a half period. We're not talking from June 22nd to 2002 to 2022 to date, right? We're speaking about just a year and a half period. And with that recruitment of officers, we're talking about trained, there were also pre-Alasini task force. There were the tourism task force, in which the government would have recruited just around that same time. Yeah? So if that is a major, if that is a major accomplishment or a major project by the NDC, NNP, let's start to check our accomplishment as it relates to recruitment of police officers. The second one says 26 nurses and 9 doctors were employed to strengthen healthcare delivery. Is a major project. Ladies and gentlemen, I am certain that even the previous NDC administration, when they took office in 2008 to 2010, thereabout, they would have recruited more than 50-something of nurses. And I am attesting to this because just around that same time, I have a sibling that was joining the nursing school. And so just around that time, she and her friends, a few of them, ever so often on my patrolling tour, I saw many of them, because you know, before they were being trained up at the hospital, that area in the back of there. So that area there in itself, they were always coming to town and frequenting themselves around the town of St. George. And I am certain, I'm not talking NNP, just around that time, there was a heightened recruitment of nurses. And that was between the short stint of time to the NDC's time. When NNP took office back in 2013, the amount of persons and young persons that I didn't know that around that time they was in school and then joined nursing through the length and breadth of Grenada. Yeah, but this is a major project. When you talk doctors, I remember that within my little village, I'm talking St. Mark's here alone, we saw more than 4 to 5 qualified doctors after given scholarship and sent off. They came back just around the 2020, let me see, 2013, 2019 area, just around there. The scholarship that was given, we had just in St. Mark's, just in the St. Mark's area, and I'm thinking about persons who I went to school with. I can tell you 3 persons that I went to school with. Now, just around that same time when NNP came back in office, just in St. Mark's alone, yeah, more than 3 to 4 or more. I know of a sibling. I know of one of the young pediatricians. He would have passed away. I know of a young lady in St. Mark's. And I think there was another one, an Alexander young man, who again, within the St. Mark's area, yeah, who were made or became qualified doctors. And I'm talking about a very short period of time in one constituency. So when you come and you mention deployment of officers, come on, of doctors and nurses, major project. They said the enhancement at the Maurice Bishop International Airport. Ladies and gentlemen, must we go there? Again, as I said, it is important that the NNP come and we speak about those things. Because at the end of the day, when we go back to the meaning, and it gives conversation as it relates to complexity. It says these projects are multifaceted and require a high degree of management and coordination. So when you have seen the execution or the building being built, there was a high level of tentative process that must have taken place. And within that alone, that project at the airport, the NNP did diligent and careful agreement and process happened in order to have it been at the stage that it is in now. Because at the end of the day, a lot had to happen. Remember, this is an international airport. And so you can't come with any kind of thing in order to, at the end of the day, get things up and running. And so the process took its time. And today, they're taking it as theirs. That is their project, their enhancement. Again, that is debunked. Because that never happened under your stewardship in terms of its management. Its continuum and its continuation and conclusion might have happened under you, but give us the blasted praise. Upgrade of Windward Fish Market and Jetty. Now, I said to myself, I said, let me not address this one because I know very little of it. So I would leave it alone. I would leave it alone. That doesn't mean that I would not find out more. The renovation of community centers and primary and secondary school across the nation. AC is down. Ladies and gentlemen, I am from St. Mark's. And St. Mark's, as a small community and constituency in Grenada, within the past 3 years, have not seen a renovation of any community center through the length and breadth of St. Mark's. Neither primary school, neither secondary school. I vote in the town of St. George. And I am unaware as to any community center renovated, primary school or secondary school. I am very close with the people in the St. George's Northwest area. I am unaware as to any community center or any primary or secondary school that have been upgraded. I am subjected to correction. Point me in the direction where I must go in terms of finding that credible source to inform me that throughout this nation, this government did a vast number of community center renovation, primary and secondary school. Point me in the right direction. They executed repairs and roadworks, including the Calivini Main Road and the Lacaloom Sewer Project. When I read this and I saw the renovation of a sewer project, I was like, okay, no problem. I would give you guys that. Because the amount of shit all you do, I expect a sewer to be a main project for all you. So shit all you like, so fix thing for shit. Initiated the UK CIF project and sustain and maintain programs for schools. Again, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk major projects, initiated the UK CIF project, initiated. They increased the Imani trainees stipend to $1,200. Nice headline. Now, what a lot of persons are failing to understand as it relates to the Imani program under the National Democratic Congress is this. They placed everybody at a balance of $1,200. So there were persons within the $700 and $1,000 regime that was very minimal to the stipend collected by Imani persons. Now, there were persons working for $1,000, $1,001. So some persons received a $100 increase. But let's talk about the persons who were already past that amount and working for $1,005 in some circumstances. Because there were persons working for that amount in the Imani program. Yes, $1,500. And ask for the receipt, and I can make it available to you guys. Now, when they made 1,002 a threshold, it means that there were persons who had to come down the scale. So while other persons received a mere $100 or $200 increase, because some more or most person were at $1,000, very few Imani workers were at $700. Very few. And if there were, maybe a handful. Most persons were within the $1,000, $1,001, thereabout. So the increase was a mega $170 something dollars. But let's talk about the persons who were within the $1,500 scope and the $300 or the $200 plus that was removed from their stipend. So when persons believe that there was an increase thereof, yes, there is an admittance that there were persons who got an increase of $100 and something dollars. But there were also persons who had a reduction of $200, $300 plus. Ask me, I could provide. So that in itself, as it relates to labeling it as an increase, is a blatant misleading concept. They implemented license upgrade program to support new business, new jobs, and small businesses. Now, that in itself is, it must go hand in hand. Because if you're upgrading my process or my license or so on, it means that my availability to maybe start my small business through a loan process must be easy. So, GDB, that played a pivotal role back then in terms of small businesses, the sales program after the COVID-19 period to aid in all this, should have been an important process in terms of that. So when you would have licensed and upgraded license, what went thereafter to small businesses? They went to GDB and they could not have qualified to get some of the loans. Because they were the bigger boys getting $1 million and $2 million and 2 point how much million. So when you just upgraded my status in terms of my license and I can't get nothing to boost my business or develop my business or even open a business, waste that time. So that's papi show. They granted more scholarships to youth and extended school age for improved learning opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a blatant, misleading lie. Because only this morning, I went on my own little research. And for those of you who do like ChatGPT, go on it and do the research yourself. Go to deep research. And ask the question to ChatGPT as it relates to the scholarship given by the New National Party within the period 2013-2018. Between that period alone. Ladies and gentlemen, within that period alone, the New National Party would have given an exceeding amount of scholarships to young people here in Grenada. An exceeding amount. The most seen in the island's history is how they described it. Most seen in the island's history. Big achievement, major project. Here the next one. They achieved a record $1 billion in revenue from the CBI program. And here we are, a few years or months after, and projects are incomplete. Persons are not being paid. Months, 30 plus teachers not seeing their salaries reflected in the different financial institutions. And you boast of $1 million in CBI project. Not one major initiative project in Grenada of a high value or standard. Now this one swept my feet. Sustained the national economic growth and reduced unemployment. I remember, well, the next two swept me off my foot, I must say. I remember when the IMF gave reports on Grenada's sustainability and development and processes. The National Democratic Congress castigated the IMF and all other monetary institutions that gave reports that basically uplifted at the time where Grenada was. Today, IMF report is God. The IMF report is God today. Hear this one. They launched the CES program, providing $15 million to business recovery post-COVID-19. I want to read something from the New Today. Not the New Today, sorry. Let me get it correctly so that right. I think my hands just fall on it. It says right. In 2021, ladies and gentlemen. 2021, yes. 2021, September 1st, 2021. Ensure that I had the right thing in position. Right. For some reason, it's not opening for me. It's not opening. I don't know why. But however, ladies and gentlemen, what I have here is an application form that was made available to Grenadians in 2021, where persons can apply or could have applied for the CESS program. Now, if that was made available to Grenadians in 2021, how are you therefore telling me that this is the political organization that launched the CESS program and provided $15.1 million? How? How? So, ladies and gentlemen, you see where I'm going with this conversation. Now, if we don't take the time off and we don't speak on those issues, somebody reading that would say, wow, yeah, boy, the government doing real good. Because here we are seeing that government, woo, is doing thing. If we don't take the time off to do this, persons who are ignorant are going to run with it. Persons who don't know better is going to believe it. Offer a 1-year tax amnesty to all taxpayers. Ladies and gentlemen, when did that happen in Grenada? When? No, listen to me, and I said I'm going to do it here. Tax amnesty in Grenada. I'm in searching. A tax amnesty was announced in the presentation in 2023 statement by the Minister of Finance. He explained that 77 million in outstanding taxes are owed, along with late fees and penalties, and the amnesty is aimed to settling money owing the government. So when you take this as a praise, even the IMF would have asked Grenada not to do that. So how does it become a major project? The man do it because he have people out of the state. And when he look at the list, he maybe realize he have 2 friends in it. Maybe himself included. So when the government throws away $77 million and supporters see this as a major accomplishment, it is fascinating. Now, not too far in this thing, the IMF would have won, and that is the 30th. This is a publishing I'm reading here on May 30th, 2023. IMF warned Grenadians against offering future tax amnesty. The International Monetary Fund had advised the government of Grenada not to continue a tax amnesty program implemented on the 1st of January and scheduled to conclude on the 31st of December 2023. We emphasize that several times to the government that it is one that should be the last one, is a result that should be the last one. It should be very deeply rooted in people's mind and those who are owing tax to government that this should be the last one. That was said by Hugh Dunlin, IMF Mission Chief of Grenada, in just concluding Article 4, consultation of IMF Articles of Agreement. Both parties, IMF and Government of Grenada, asserted that although amnesties are sometimes good, it is not the ultimate solution to the problem that are faced by taxations and thereby cannot offer a permanent remedy. The tax amnesty was announced by in the presentation. The IMF has indicated that the government does not only have to say there will be no more tax amnesty, but it also has to step up in enforcing tax administration laws. The efficiencies of tax system can improve through an updated tax incentive framework and increase risk-based internal auditing and custom administration. So when you come on your ball, that is a major thing. The International Monetary Fund is seeing that as a dotish step that was made by government. So all you see? You understand where I'm coming from? Somebody said me I'm sweating a lot. Yeah, I'm perspiring a lot. My AC is off. Yeah? And it rains, it pours. My computer going on my AC. But AC is a small thing. According to people, that is small problems. So how do you consider this a major accomplishment when international bodies are saying to you, are you crazy? How you could do that? You're crazy? You allow 77, more than 700 and something $1,000, $1 million, because maybe your friends and them $777 million. And ladies and gentlemen, don't look at this as no accomplishment. This is a man who has been around a lot of persons prior to him being elected. You have a lot of big shots and a lot of big persons that are in positions that he knows the financial status. And so, he may be giving two little friends and them a blind to catch himself in order to not reach to the stage of bankruptcy. Look at that achievement. How much of us that owe taxes in Grenada, the layman man, what percentage of us that owes taxes? So when you speak taxation, I say, well, he had no tax on no item in Grenada. He didn't do that. He said the persons that owe in tax, you don't have to pay. That's what he did. Don't make it sound like if, okay, everything tax was off, flour, sugar, rice, whatever. Tell all you when all you go in depth, read, understand. Return over 30 acres of Grandlands Beach lands, including Radisson and Rivera properties, to the government's ownership. And it's a boastful thing. And you speak of CBI, which speaks to citizen by investment, and you're glad the government take land and they put it back for themselves. It's amazing. It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. The Open Regions Force Water Sculpture Park in Carriacou, a new cultural and tourism gem. The past administration built a cruise ship terminal in Carriacou. So what does that speak to culture? And let's speak of the average amount of tourists visiting Carriacou that would go see the water sculpture, as opposed to when they wasn't able to go to Carriacou at all. When cruise ship was only meant to be in Grenada, and the past administration said, no, we are going to allow some of our small ships to be able to dock in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Now that is a major project. Not thing underwater, thing above water that is important, because our cruise ship was able to dock in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, something that we have not seen for decades in Grenada. But that to them is a major project. But that to us is Papi Show. And we don't speak on it, NNP. That is why I'm here. And I said I had to do a special program on that one. Because when I look at it, I say, regularize hundreds of public workers, secured long-term employment. And you make that as a project, a major project accomplishment. Or dear Sister Kate, just between a 9-month period could have boasted of more than 200 and something persons being regularized in just about a few months. I think it was just about 9 months or so. I'll tell you, my next computer down, I would have played for you where she did it at a press briefing. And she mentioned how many persons were regularized. But government speaks of regularization of persons just after 3 years. And under 9 months or a year within the NNP, we were regularizing hundreds of people. In months. Realize, ladies and gentlemen, that we have gone through this list thus far. And how many things have you been heard mentioned on the fishing industry, in the agricultural industry, on our youth and health? By head by. Increase poor relief assistance from 300 to 500 for seniors and persons with disabilities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will not debunk this because I always say to you on my program, more money in poor people's pocket is a joy for me. And when I see poor people get at $2 and in the positions that they are, I'm okay with it. Reinstated transparency, good governance, and accountability. And he posed that when the Prime Minister come and say he's aware of the request since in August. I wonder where was the transparency there? But he reinstated it. And you speak of transparency in Grenada, there were persons that was into Dr. Mitchell's divorce process. And he refused to speak about it. There was a press briefing held every week by government here in Grenada. And you speak reinstating of transparency, good governance, and accountability. Allocated $10,000 to each constituency for small community projects. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I remember just about 2 to 3 months, there were MPs that was not even seeing that $10,000. Ensured a fair salary increase for both government and opposition parliamentarians. Major project. Community resilience and safety, major project. Ladies and gentlemen, at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, even our SGU students are not safe. Introduce a gun amnesty to reduce firearm-related violence. Ladies and gentlemen, be honest about yourself. What was the results even when that amnesty was taking place? How many young men lost their lives? How many persons were injured through gun-related violence in Grenada as opposed to all the other years? Other governments never had that issue of gun-related violence in Grenada. Install illuminated bus stops and safer night travel. Tell that to the SGU students. Tell that to them. Continued work on national water and sewer upgrade, including resolving key issues in affected communities. Ladies and gentlemen, government's 25 major projects. Laughable, but true. Them and the supporters, they posted it. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning, I decided to just post just a few, and I still miss one, of the initiative and accomplishment by the new National Party. You hear me? Just in the youth category. Only in youth. And I can speak to you about the FLY project, Youth in Agriculture, HYPE, the Imani program, Youth Bees, Empower, National Youth Parliament, Parish Youth Parliament, Gift to Succeed, National Youth Directory, Youth Month, National Holiday Program, Let's Talk, Youth Vibes, Empower, even at the prison. No, this is accomplishment in youth under the new National Party. I'm not talking about states, I'm not talking about all the other things, I'm talking about this is our accomplishment, the initiatives that we placed under the youth in here in Grenada. We don't consider them even projects. We say initiatives. Steps made to develop our young men and women in Grenada. Young people. And I'm about to come right within your face. I'm about to come within your space, within your comfort, in understanding that this is an administration that are yet to give you the attention needed. What you would have seen within the last 3 years is the changing of at least 3 persons holding the role. At this stage, ladies and gentlemen, the Minister of Youth is somebody in the past administration in whom dealt with housing and social development. And she's voiceless when it comes to understanding our young people here in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Because at the end of the day, what is most important is ensuring that she could pay her bills at the end of the month. So as the Prime Minister say, when you're hungry mouth, where you go be politician? Where you go serve your people when you're hungry mouth? But ladies and gentlemen, as I stated on Facebook, I had to come and address this one. And I'm happy that I did today. All right? Now, I want you guys to take the time off, go and take a little freshen up, have something to eat, and join us over at the St. George's Methodist School, where our public meeting will be held. That's in the town of St. George. So once you head on over there, you guys are going to see my face again when you get over there. All right? So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we move over to get ready for the live stream of the public meeting at the St. George's Methodist School.
The NDC administration failed in the first term, and they're begging for another one. Sing for them, sing for them.
Check, check, check. You know it's a beat to the big representative for DJ Soulkaholic. You run the place, you lock the place, keeping it real all the time. Boogie and dance it straight.
The leader don't listen, so they divide it. They lie for the people. So many things they promise they go do. They say $700 not enough money. They go give 1,000 to them money. Soon as they get in power, the money program over. They go in the wrong way. One term NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run this country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader don't listen. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it into. And here they say that they love the culture. The worst carnival we had in Grenada. 4 years now and things ain't getting better. And they keep pointing fingers at one another. Carnival come and carnival go. Problems to pay price money, you know. They go in the wrong way. Mash up NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run the country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader don't listen. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it into. They go in the wrong way. In fighting for so. They go in the wrong way. Remind us of the rebel. They go in the wrong way. Behaving too ignorant. They go in the wrong way. And they suspend parliament. Unemployment very high in this country. NDC send back the CCC. Teachers and nurses ain't getting salary. No proper medical facilities. Crime is on the rise, you know. Young people killing more than before. Yellow. They go in the wrong way. One term NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run this country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader don't listen. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it into. They used to talk about corruption. That was only an illusion. The money they receive on the bank account. Explain it to us, they shut up their mouth. They stop the school feeding program like this government don't give a damn. Sing this song. They go in the wrong way. Mash up NDC. They go in the wrong way. Cannot run this country. They go in the wrong way. They say the leader too hard. They go in the wrong way. So they divide it into. They go in the wrong way. Change you want and change you get. They go in the wrong way. And do nothing for St. Patrick's yet. They go in the wrong way. Some people hungry. They go in the wrong way. Uncle Tilly don't want Venezuelan money. They go in the wrong way.
check. You know it's the beat to the bling representing for DJ Soca Holly. You run the place, you lock the place, keeping it real all the time. Boogie and dancing straight.